And we'll see you tomorrow night on this channel at 6:30. Good night.
Good evening from ABC News headquarters in New York. I'm Bernard Morris. In tonight's headlines, Japanese terrorists continue to hold 143 airline passengers at gunpoint in the Sheikhdom of Dubai. The French detonate a nuclear device in the Pacific. The White House says the president has ordered those secret tape recording devices removed. And Hank Aaron hits home run number 700 as he aims at Babe Ruth's all-time record. Details on these and other stories in just a moment.
The ABC Weekend News with Bernard Morris is brought to you by Viva, the absorbent paper towel that keeps on working even when it's wet.
What do you want to do?
I don't know. What do you want to do?
I know. Let's do the Viva test they do on TV.
Now, I'll be Viva and you can be the other towel.
Okay.
Boy, Viva sure beats your towel.
Yeah, it sure does. And look, Viva is strong.
That's terrific.
Viva, it really absorbs faster.
Now, what do you want to do?
This soft, dry powder isn't my makeup. It's my antiperspirant. Dial Dry Powder. Because it's powder, it sprays on dry. Doesn't feel wet or cold. Because it's Dial, it helps stop perspiration odor and controls wetness. It even fights staining. Dial Dry Powder Antiperspirant, because I like it.
The lives of 143 persons aboard a hijacked jetliner are still at stake tonight on a desert airstrip in the Persian Sheikhdom of Dubai. 3 of 4 hijackers, reported to be Arab and Japanese, are threatening to blow up a Japan Airlines 747 if anybody should approach the plane. The president of that airline arrived a couple of hours ago from Tokyo in order to negotiate with the hijackers. They are reportedly demanding the release of a man imprisoned in Israel for taking part in the massacre of 26 people at the Lod airport last year. And a Lebanese newspaper is reporting tonight that the terrorists are also demanding a $5 million ransom for the lives of the passengers and crew. The temperature on that desert airstrip is sweltering at over 100 degrees, but the air conditioning aboard that jet is reported to be working well, and the terrified passengers have now been sent supplies of food and water. And despite worldwide protests, France today detonated a nuclear bomb some 2,000 feet above a tiny atoll in the South Pacific. That blast sent a mushroom cloud of smoke 20,000 feet into the atmosphere. The New Zealand protest frigate Otago was about 20 miles upwind of the explosion, but reported receiving no radiation at all. An American protest schooner was towed out of that area Wednesday, but U.S. Navy ships and planes were in the area for what was called environmental testing. And that test was the 34th in the French South Pacific series since 1966. For a report on what this French test means, here's Jules Bergman.
The French tests have been veiled in secrecy, but this much is known. The device exploded today was small, reportedly 5 kilotons in yield, or the equivalent of 5,000 tons of TNT. The device was presumably the nuclear trigger for France's first H-bomb. Small enough for French ships to have stayed close by during the blast, the device in itself presents no danger from radioactivity outside the immediate blast zone. But it's intended to lead up to the testing of a new generation of fusion or hydrogen weapons that could present fallout dangers. France is determined to create a nuclear force second to none. Along with mainland China, France is the only nation not to have agreed to end atomic testing in the atmosphere. While a single small test, such as today's, doesn't significantly raise radioactivity levels, a new series of tests will. Any increase in fallout and levels of radioactivity in humans threatens possible genetic damage to future generations. A major reason why France's new test series has stirred up such violent protest. This is Jules Bergman, ABC News, reporting.
And United States jets continued their bombing of communist positions in Cambodia today. Field reports say that the planes mistakenly hit government troops 20 miles from Phnom Penh, killing 2 Cambodians and wounding 3 others. And the chief of Cambodia's armed forces reportedly might ask the United States to extend its air support past the August 15th deadline agreed to by Congress and the President if the current level of the fighting continues. A report on the role of the U.S. air power in Cambodia from Steve Bell.
As the deadline for President Nixon's control over the bombing of Cambodia draws near, the essential facts remain the same. Cambodian troops with their American arms and equipment are drawn into an increasingly tight circle around the capital of Phnom Penh. Rebel troops consistently cut off a majority of the highways leading into the city, and almost all observers agree that the only factor preventing a rout of government forces is the continued bombing by U.S. planes. This battlefield is along Highway 3, less than 12 miles south of Phnom Penh. The Cambodian troops here are armed with a maze of weapons ranging from Chinese machine guns dating back to the days of Sihanouk to M16s and armored personnel carriers provided by the Americans. But despite their superiority in firepower, they are heavily dependent on U.S. air support. In fact, diplomatic sources in Phnom Penh are convinced the intensity of the airstrikes has increased in the past week. In the field, the dependence of Cambodian troops is easily documented. While the armored columns stand aside, ground controllers with English language proficiency call in strikes by the F-4s that streak overhead.
Okay, that's a good one, You can,
The fireballs and columns of smoke break on the horizon only a few hundred yards from the friendly positions. The Cambodians provide a staccato counterpoint firing from their APCs, but there is seldom any move to follow up the airstrikes with an advance on the ground. For the government troops, it remains primarily a holding action. But the question remains, what chance will they have to hold their tenuous positions if and when the bombing is halted? This is Steve Bell, ABC News.
The fear of deadly botulism poisoning has led the Food and Drug Administration to recall more than 300,000 jars of mushrooms from grocers' shelves in the New England states, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and California. The mushrooms, all in glass jars, were produced by Worth Food Products in Lawrence, Massachusetts. They carry 5 brand names, including Worth, Pastine, Purveyor, Carriage Trade, and Marinated Mushrooms. And a 20-year-old dark-haired beauty from the Philippines is Miss Universe of 1973. Maria Moran was awarded that title in Athens, Greece, in an historic 1,800-year-old theater. It was 700 home runs today for 39-year-old Henry Aaron of the Atlanta Braves. Hammer and Henry blasted number 700 off Philadelphia Phillies left-hander Ken Brett. Aaron is just 14 homers away from Babe Ruth's all-time record of 714. Courtesy of WPHL Philadelphia, here's the way it was described by sportscaster Harry Callis.
Darrell Evans, second base, nobody out.
And that's the world of national news. I'm Bernard Morris. Good night.
This has been a presentation of ABC News.
150 of golf's top women players are competing for some $40,000 in prize money in the prestigious U.S. Women's Open Golf Championship. ABC Sports will bring you the action live from the Country Club in Rochester, New York, tomorrow afternoon at 1:30 here on ABC. She's a teenage girl whose charms drive a middle-aged man to his own destruction. Sue Lyon, James Mason, and Shelley Winters star in Lolita, next on the Saturday Night Movie.
Tonight at 6:30 here on Channel 7.
For a real outdoor flavor, I don't bother with messy charcoal. My Charm Glow gas barbecue is like a kitchen range. I set the temperature and the charm hooks heat up in seconds. Then I create. Charm Glow barbecues are self-cleaning, and you can bake, grill, or broil many of my personal recipes the Charm Glow way in your own backyard.
Complete Charm Glow gas barbecue start at $59.90. Available at your local dealer now.
This week, TV Guide separates fact from fiction when it looks into rumors about X-rated movies on television. TV Guide.
We interrupt our regular program schedule to bring you a special report on the Senate Watergate hearings. The three networks are rotating the responsibility of presenting live coverage of these hearings, and today is ABC's turn. Now, from our studios in Washington, here is ABC News correspondent Frank Reynolds.
Good morning. The Senate Watergate Committee expects to hear many interesting things today from the witness before it, Gordon Strachan. But quite possibly the most significant information the committee will receive today will come from the White House, as the president responds to the committee's request that he supply documents pertaining to the Watergate investigation and also tape recordings of conversations that he had with various assistants and campaign officials. Mr. Nixon's response is expected to be no. The response has not yet been received, however, by the committee, and we understand the White House says that it may happen sometime around noon today. As soon as we get the word on that, of course, that will be the information that the committee is waiting to hear. While they're waiting, they'll be busy hearing from Gordon Strachan, who is a very important figure in this entire affair. We'll continue with our coverage of the Senate Watergate hearings after this message.
RC Cola's got the taste that's right for you.
RC Cola, it's not too heavy, not too sweet, it's right for you. RC Cola,
If what you do is right for you, no matter what the others do, then RC Cola is right for you.
RC tastes not too heavy, not too sweet.
RC Cola's got the taste that's right for you.
RC Cola, it's not too heavy, not too sweet, it's right for you. RC Cola,
If what you do is right for you, no matter what the others do, then RC Cola is right for you.
RC tastes not too heavy, not too sweet.
Today's witness, Gordon Strachan, 29 years old, formerly an assistant to H.R. Haldeman on the White House staff. Strachan was the liaison man, you see him here, between the White House and the committee to re-elect the president. Jeb Magruder has testified that he kept Strachan informed of everything that was happening at the committee and assumed that Strachan then relayed the information on to his boss, Haldeman. In his opening statement last Friday, Strachan said that he told Haldeman about a political intelligence gathering plan several months before Watergate, and a day or so after the break-in, after talking with Haldeman again, Strachan admitted destroying certain documents. Strachan also handled huge sums of money, though he insists he had no idea what the money was for. In December of '72 or January of this year, he delivered $350,000 in cash to Fred LaRue, who was then still an official of the committee to re-elect the president. And Strachan said he became more than a little suspicious when LaRue put on gloves before touching the money. In that 15-page opening statement on Friday, Strachan said, "Much of the information I will disclose is politically embarrassing to me and the administration." However, he did not seem overwhelmed by a sense of repentance. In fact, he admits to not much more than associating with people who have confessed to criminal wrongdoing, as he put it. Strachan displayed a familiar White House attitude toward the press. Reports predicting his testimony, he said, have been nothing short of incredible. And he made it very clear he has little use for Jeb Stuart Magruder, whom he portrayed as a self-serving type of bureaucrat who really did not keep Strachan very well informed. Well, whatever the outcome of the tape controversy, the hearings this week move closer and closer to the Oval Office of the President. For Gordon Strachan reported to Haldeman. Haldeman, of course, reported only to the President himself. After Strachan's testimony, the next witness will be John Ehrlichman, and then Haldeman. My colleague Sam Donaldson is standing by outside the caucus room in the old Senate office building. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning, Frank. I think you put it all very well. We have Strachan first. We have the waiting for the letter from the White House. That, of course, will be the big news here today, unless Mr. Strachan has something to tell us that his statement does not indicate. And then we have the question of when we're going to get to the next witness, who is still scheduled to be John Ehrlichman, maybe tomorrow or maybe on Wednesday.
Well, I understand the committee is anxious to move right along and keep the questioning going with Strawn so that they can adhere to some sort of a schedule.
Well, on Friday, Senator Ervin instituted what is known as the 10-minute rule, but immediately broke it, and senators who wanted to went beyond the 10 minutes. About the White House letter, our information is, as you've mentioned, that we may get it late this morning or around noon, in which case the committee plans to hold an executive session during the lunch recess and consider the letter and perhaps take some action on it.
Well, that action, I suppose, would be in the form of voting to subpoena the tapes and the documents. Is that right?
The votes are in the committee to do that. They've all talked about subpoena. The problem with subpoena, as Senator Ervin has said, is that aside from issuing it, there's not much more that can be done short of a 2 or 3 year court battle. In other words, the subpoena itself, if the president chooses not to honor it, and all indications would be that he might take that course, would not immediately produce the documents, would not immediately produce the tapes. So they're exploring other possibilities.
Sam, it appears they're about ready to begin. I see just about everybody is in position, and the witness, Gordon Strawn, is being photographed a few more times. His photographers cluster about him. Sam Ervin gazing across the table at him.
Strawn is a very important witness, depending on what he tells us, because he was so close to Mr. Haldeman, the White House Chief of Staff.
Assistant
yeah, go down.
Under Mr. Klein, and I particularly reported to Mr. Magruder.
Now, what were your duties at that time?
Well, I was originally recruited to be what was called a project manager. Particular issues would be assigned to one junior staff man and one senior staff person. For example, in the 1970s...
Special report from ABC News in Washington. Here is ABC News correspondent Frank Reynolds.
Good afternoon. The public session of the Senate Watergate hearings will be delayed for some time this afternoon because the members of the committee are now in executive closed-door session to consider their response to the latest communication from the White House. Within the hour, the president has informed the Senate committee and the special prosecutor, Archibald Cox, that he will not divulge the contents of the tape recordings made in the White House, his conversations with various associates about the Watergate affair. The president said the fact is the tapes would not finally settle the central issues before your committee. Mr. Nixon said that he has personally listened to a number of them, and he says the tapes are entirely consistent with what he knows to be the truth and what he has stated to be the truth. The special prosecutor, Archibald Cox, will hold a news conference in 1 hour in order to give his response to the president. We'll come back on the air in plenty of time to start this afternoon session of the Watergate hearings, but because they are going to be delayed now, we'll go off the air until the members are ready to deliver their response to the president. This is Frank Reynolds, ABC News, Washington.
This special report has come to you from ABC News in Washington. Stay tuned for further details. We now return to our regular program schedule.
Pumped a lot of pain down in New Orleans, but I never saw the good side of the city till I hitched a ride on the riverboat Queen. Big wheels keep on turning, primary keep on burning, rolling, rolling, rolling on the river. You have no money, people on the river are happy to give. Big wheels keep on turning, primary keep on burning, rolling, rolling, rolling on the river. Oh yes, now rolling, rolling, rolling on the river. Rolling, rolling, rolling on the river. Come on, girls, now rolling.
The responsibility of presenting live coverage of these hearings, and today is ABC's turn. Now, from our studios in Washington, here is ABC News correspondent Frank Reynolds.
Good afternoon. The afternoon session of the Senate Watergate Committee has been delayed, but they are going to get underway very shortly now. There have been a number of developments. First of all, the President has refused the request of the Senate Committee and of the Special Prosecutor, Archibald Cox, for the tape recordings of the conversations he has had with various aides about the Watergate matter. Mr. Nixon did so in separate letters to Cox and to Senator Ervin. Now, there's been this late development just a few minutes ago. The Special Prosecutor, Archibald Cox, announced that he will challenge the constitutional aspects of the President's position in court. He disagrees with the President. He claims the tapes are vital. Mr. Nixon said they would not establish the major question before the committee. Cox said the tapes are vital evidence that could establish guilt or innocence, and he is going to go to court to try to force the President to divulge those tapes. Now, there's been a late development insofar as the Senate Committee is concerned. So let's go to our correspondent, Sam Donaldson, on the Hill. Hello, Sam.
Yes, Frank. The Senate Watergate Committee has just voted unanimously, 7-0, to subpoena the relevant tapes and documents from the President. The committee met in executive session this afternoon. They started about 2:15. They had a vote on the Senate floor that interrupted the deliberations for about 15 minutes. But they have just now adjourned the executive session, and we understand that the action was to subpoena the relative tapes and documents, although the chairman has yet to make an announcement.
So the President now, by virtue of his response to both the Senate Committee and to the Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox, will face two legal challenges. One, of course, he must decide whether to accept the subpoena or to respond to it, the subpoena issued by the Senate Committee. But also, apparently, Mr. Cox says he's going to go into court. We haven't had the opportunity today to go into the President's response at any great length, and I think while we're waiting for the members of the committee to come back in, we still have a moment, don't we, Sam, before they...
Yes, we do. Senators Ervin and Baker have not come back to the committee room yet, although some other senators are in their places.
Let me just read this one paragraph here, or part of the one paragraph of the President's letter to Senator Ervin. The fact is that the tapes would not finally settle the central issues before your committee. Before their existence became publicly known, I personally listened to a number of them. I'm quoting from the President's letter. The tapes are entirely consistent with what I know to be the truth and what I have stated to be the truth. However, as in any verbatim recording of informal conversations, they contain comments that persons with different perspectives and motivations would inevitably interpret in different ways. Furthermore, there are inseparably interspersed in them a great many very frank and very private comments on a wide range of issues and individuals wholly extraneous to the committee's inquiry. Now, the President says, accordingly, the tapes, which have been under my sole personal control, will remain so. None has been transcribed or made public, and none will be. And the letter to Mr. Cox stated essentially the same reasons, citing the separation of powers principle or doctrine for the refusal of Mr. Cox's request. And that is based on the fact that Cox intends to use the tapes in a court proceeding. And this raises the question of a conflict between the judicial branch of the government and the executive branch of the government. So the President has said no to both today. The wagons are being drawn in a circle around the White House, you might say. And apparently we're getting quite a response, both from Mr. Cox, who says he's going to go to court, and from the Senate committee. By the way, Sam, that Cox announcement also said he would not resign.